the reality is if you kill two people in our community, and the two people you kill are your parents, if we're not going after those people...
Thank you so much.
What do you want from us?
It's kind of the all-American family. That's why we're trying to do our best to get down to what's going on in this household and figure out who our suspects are.
AJ Armstrong.
He was 16 years old when investigators say he shot and killed his parents inside their Southwest Houston home.
LA 911, where's your emergency?
I heard 2 gunshots downstairs in my parents' room.
2 rounds, which are very close together.
Boom, boom.
Into Mom's head.
And that's when I heard the gunshots, when I got like 4 or 5 stairs down.
And then across the bed to shoot in Antonio.
They had it was like a mask, and like you could only see the eyes and the mouth.
Well, did you physically see somebody? Or?
Yeah, like I saw him running.
As the inconsistencies kind of started to pile up on top of one another, we can't let you get away with all this. Like there's too much.
AJ Armstrong back in court a 3rd time.
The previous 2 trials have ended up in hung juries.
The court declares a mistrial.
Declaring a mistrial.
This was not to be. The 3rd trial, we now have a verdict.
There's reasonable doubt all the way through this case from beginning to end. Find AJ Armstrong not guilty.
The days up to the murder, gasoline across the top step, setting the house on fire, searching on the internet how to detonate a car bomb, test firing a weapon. You know what his intent is.
You better get that camera out of our way.
The jury find the defendant, Antonio Armstrong Jr., guilty of capital murder.
We have stood by our grandson's side every day since 2016.
Our family has been through so much hell behind all of this. Tremendous grief, anxiety, and pain for the last 6 years.
There's so much evidence that points to AJ. So much evidence.
We've now seen what a murderer looks like. It can be anyone, and the fact that it was their own son, it is a tragedy for the whole family.
Seven years ago, I was there. That morning, stood right here, less than 3 hours after Dawn and Antonio Sr. were shot to death, killed right up there in their own bedroom. Of course, that morning, I could never have predicted what would happen over the next 7 years. No, that morning, I just watched as a 16-year-old was handcuffed and charged with killing the 2 people who loved him more than anything in the world, his parents. And now, well, a jury's decided he killed them too. But it's so much more than that. 7 years. What a case. What a story.
Houston 911, do you need medical, police, or fire?
Going to be police. His Bel Air is a transfer. He's whispering, advising he just heard gunshots in his parents' room.
And your name?
AJ.
Any medical attention needed?
I heard gunshots, so I don't really know.
In your parents' bedroom?
Yes. I heard the whisper. That makes me nervous.
Can you hear anything else?
I don't know.
Did it sound like a handgun, rifle, or shotgun?
I'm not good at guns, but out there. I don't know if it's anything like that. I know my dad has a gun.
This is not someone calling 911 for help. This is someone calling 911 to try and start covering up his crime.
Okay, can you hear anything else that's going on?
I feel like it's loud.
When you fire a weapon inside of a closed environment, especially without ear protection, it causes your ears to ring.
It was fake. There's no panic in his voice. He's whispering for some reason.
You're on the 3rd floor?
I don't think anybody can understand the tone of his voice, the absence of fear, how just chill he is.
I hear a 16-year-old kid who's scared and doesn't know what's going on.
Prosecutors say they hear a liar.
That's their version. That doesn't mean it's true.
Don't leave from the safety of your room.
And the fact that he knows his sister is alive. Because if he's so concerned for his sister, he would have run to her room. But he knows she's alive.
I think, honestly, that was a time where he kind of slipped up and let his emotions verbalize themselves, and he didn't realize it.
People love to judge how people react to situations, but they have no idea how they're going to react when they're in that situation.
Okay, they're asking you to step out of the house.
Yeah. Tara, you gotta get up. Come on, you gotta get up. Come on.
He said it 4 times. I need to go get my sister. I need to go get my sister. But he never said he needed to go get his parents or check on them.
Tara, I need you to get up. Tara, I need you to get up. Come with me. Come on, come with me. You gotta go outside.
I just can't see a 16-year-old, if they heard gunshots in their parents' room, going down there and just ignoring that and walking right by, not even looking in unless you know what happened in that room.
If he thought for a moment there was an assailant potentially in the house, how could he do that? That just doesn't make sense, except if you are the killer.
You gotta go outside. I was up in the bathroom and I heard gunshots and all. You gotta go outside and figure out what's going on. Come on, just grab my hand and stay behind me.
Hey, I'm the one that called. Tara, come on.
You would just run out of the house. You wouldn't think about, is the alarm on? The fact that he remembered to turn it off before he exited the house, I think is an admission in and of itself.
Mic check, 1, 2, 3.
Good morning, my name is Investigator Jimmy Dotson with the HPD Homicide Division.
16 minutes.
Officers this morning were dispatched at approximately about 1:30 in the morning.
From the moment AJ called 911 to the moment police arrived, 16 minutes that would be scrutinized and dissected for years, methodically picked apart.
They made contact with one of the children who was inside of the house at the time.
But in the early morning hours of July 29th, 2016, officers first arriving on scene simply saw a 16-year-old and his little sister with no idea what they were walking into.
He's heard gunshots. He doesn't know what's going on. He runs out. The police immediately accuse him of doing it.
Those patrol officers that went in that house were utter heroes. They literally didn't know what they were going into. They secured the crime scene. Investigators show up a couple hours later.
So I start at the front door, but I'm a detective that likes to go straight to where the scene of the crime happened.
When now former Houston Police Detective Jimmy Dotson arrived at the Armstrong house in Southwest Houston, he noted several family members outside, had questions for them. But first, Dotson needed to see what had happened to Dawn and Antonio Sr. The detective went into the house, up the stairs to the second floor, through double doors that led to an office.
The first thing I see is like a little projectile sitting on the carpet. And I look up, and when I look up, I'm like, it's interesting, there's a hole in the ceiling.
That office ceiling directly under AJ Armstrong's third floor bedroom.
And so I see that, and I kind of just put that in my back pocket.
Then, into the bedroom where Dawn lay dead. The 42-year-old mother had been shot twice behind her right ear. Antonio Sr. had been next to her, also shot in the head, but all that remained was the blood stain. He was still breathing when paramedics had arrived, gasping, fighting for his life, they said in court. The 42-year-old father was rushed to the hospital, where he too would later die.
You think about the evil act that had to take place to take a woman like Dawn out of this world and Antonio out of this world, who were just trying to be good parents. Like, they provided an amazing life for their kids. I mean, they lived in a beautiful home that, AJ Armstrong Jr. was driving a nice truck and Josh is driving a Mustang, and like, this is provided to them by a family that loves them. They got killed for being good parents, at the end of the day.
Next, Dodson says he went into the kitchen. The murder weapon, a .22 caliber pistol on the counter. Antonio Sr.'s own gun. Drawers pulled out, and a note. I have been watching you for a long time. Come get me.
And so all these things kind of start telling me someone's trying to throw us off here, but they're not either mature enough or sophisticated enough to kind of pull it off.
You think the scene looks juvenile at this
It looks juvenile and it looks very staged.
There is teenager written all over this crime. I mean, that note is something you would see in a movie. That's not a note that you would see in real life.
Somebody who would take the time to write that is somebody who had complete control over the crime scene. Wasn't worried about getting out of the house, wasn't worried about who else was alive in the house.
If it's the victim's own weapon, it means it has to be someone with knowledge of the weapon. If anybody came from the outside, one, they wouldn't use their own victim's gun, and two, you wouldn't have it there for the police to do the check on it.
Dodson noted the windows on the first floor were closed, locked. Same with the doors, blinds undisturbed.
We see the living room, it's perfect. We see the dining room and it's perfect. You know, the house is very well kept. I'm like, let's go back into my back pocket now. I need to go up to the third floor because that bullet clearly came through the floor up there. I need to go see what that looks like.
A.J. Armstrong's bedroom. A pile of socks in the middle of the floor.
And that was weird to me because it coincided with where the bullet was. Well, I know that on TV, like everything else, you know, they want to make things quieter when we do things. And so that's where my mind immediately goes. I bet you he stuck his hand inside of there, pulled a trigger on the gun to make sure that it was quiet so that no one else heard it.
Inside AJ's closet, police later collected this comforter and a Texas A&M pillow with a bullet hole.
After I've looked at AJ's room and everything, now I've got enough to form the questions that I need to ask family members. And so my next step was to go outside and identify who all was there and start interviewing them on the scene.
One by one, Dodson started questioning them, including Dawn's parents and Antonio Sr.'s mother.
I was asking about the family dynamics. You know, what is the relationship like between the kids and their parents?
And then Dodson says he'll never forget it. What he says one of AJ's grandmothers said.
One of them told me that if AJ did do it, it would be because of drugs. You know, he's been having problems with drugs.
You didn't say anything about AJ? Someone just, a family member just volunteered that information?
She did during the interview. You know, and for us, you know, that's a red flag, right? That's something else that's kind of going into this stack of evidence that we have over there.
What was really going on in the Armstrong house? There was one person who might know. Josh Armstrong, AJ's older half-brother. Josh Armstrong lived less than a mile from the Armstrong house in his own apartment. Dodson interviewed him first. Josh's account?
My brother called me, I jumped in the car, I hauled butt over here. And at that point in time, why would he be a suspect? You know, there's no reason for him to be. I'm being told the doors were locked. I'm being told the alarm was secured. The weapon's inside of the home. There's a test fire through the third floor. At this point, the evidence is monumental, leading one way.
They thought they had their guy and they weren't going to worry about any other evidence, and they never did any other investigation.
HPD zeroed in on AJ within the first 10 minutes, 11 minutes of being on scene.
If you look at the evidence in this case, why would we think otherwise?
They were right. And it didn't take them long to come to a crime scene and say, this looks like the work of a 16-year-old who tried to cover something up.
All these arrows are pointing in one direction. We don't go on wild geese chase.
Police questioned Josh, photographed his hands. They bagged AJ's and Kayra's, who, remember, was just 12 years old. Later, tests would confirm no gunshot residue was found on any of them. As detectives worked, another call came into 911. This one, frantic.
Houston 911, you need medical, police, or fire?
Somebody's been shot.
Excuse me?
Somebody's been shot. I need police.
Hannah Pilon, Josh's girlfriend, who had spent the night with him at his apartment.
I went to sleep around like 10 or 11. And then it was all downhill from there.
And the next thing you know, what do you remember?
Josh shaking me, saying, "Babe, wake up, somebody's in the house."
Hannah says Josh told her AJ called. Their parents had been shot. Josh grabbed a shotgun from the closet and ran out, leaving a terrified Hannah.
Okay, ma'am, please, I need for you to calm down for a little bit.
I'm at my boyfriend's apartment, and he just woke me up, and
ran over to his house because he lived like 2 minutes down the street because his brother got a call. He just got there and just called me and told me that his parents had been shot.
You know, I only talked to him for 5 minutes, yes, but we were observing him the entire time. When I was interviewing others, I was seeing him, and he was just sitting there waiting patiently.
Police let Josh go. He went home to Hannah.
Josh's face was just really puffy. You could tell he had been crying and I didn't know what to do. I just tried to be there for him as best as I could.
But his brother, AJ, arrested, handcuffed, read his rights, taken to police headquarters, where an officer checking AJ in slapped this orange visitor's badge on the teen's chest. We'll come back to that. And the questioning began.
If we'd have been able to show the world how stoic he was the whole time, they would have known right off the bat, like, this is cold. It's very cold.
The Armstrongs truly were the all-American family. Antonio Sr., from humble beginnings, born in Kashmere Gardens, a working-class, predominantly black community in North Houston, the oldest of three. Faith, family, football was life.
Now Walters back
And football opened doors.
Antonio Armstrong gets to the quarterback.
Antonio played for Texas A&M. He was really good. All-American linebacker good. Drafted by the 49ers, played briefly for the Dolphins and Rams, and when Dawn came into his life, it was them against the world.
You know, people would look at them and say they were almost a perfect couple.
When they met at church, Dawn's son Josh was a toddler. Antonio loved him like his own. And after the couple married, Antonio adopted Josh.
They were amazing. They were two amazing people. And Antonio was a wonderful father. I couldn't have had a better daughter-in-law, a greater mother to be the mother of my grandchildren. I would tell her that a lot.
Football took them to Canada, where AJ was born. Here's Antonio Sr. playing in the Canadian League.
Antonio Armstrong.
Family brought them back to Houston. They opened a couple gyms. Antonio was a pastor at his mother's church. Dawn taught Sunday school.
They just did everything together, and that's saying a lot. When you have work together, you go to church together.
The same church where hundreds of people would attend their funerals in 2016. AJ in the front row, special permission to attend his parents' service because by then he had been charged with killing them. Capital murder, 16, and in juvenile jail. It was AJ's own words, police say.
Now, just a little bit of information for you. What's your first name?
Antonio.
That helped put him there, helped detectives build their case.
As the inconsistencies kind of started to pile up on top of one another, you know, that's when you'll hear me in the interview kind of chime in and be like, look, man, we can't let you get away with all this.
All right, today's date is July 29th, 2016. It is 7:47 a.m.
6 hours after AJ called 911, he was inside the Houston Police Department getting interrogated.
How was your relationship with your parents in general?
It was a pretty good relationship.
Okay, you get along with your mom? Get along with dad? No problems, no
Me and
issues?
dad were like really close. And then me and my mom, like me, my brother and my sister like had our like little issues with my mom, but it was never anything like serious. Like it was just like family stuff. But we were all like really close, so.
It seems little and it seems minute, but that's what we as detectives are supposed to find, right? The minutia, the small details. And so for us, we're like, that's a weird answer.
Let's just start with the concept that you know your mother's dead. It's 5 hours later, and he says some nice things about his dad, and then says, but my brother, sister, and I have issues with our mom. That just begins the whole process. That's not normal, and that shows a disdain for her.
Whenever we tell him that his mother's gone, she's not coming back, there's no emotion at all. That's what made it so eerie, actually, because we've got all of this evidence pointing one direction, and that's at him.
You can speculate and say, yeah, he should be upset, but maybe he's in shock. Maybe he's not, he's just lost. Maybe he hasn't slept in the 8 hours he's been in the back of a police car. There's many reasons for that.
As I was walking downstairs, that's when I heard the 2 gunshots go off, and I ran back upstairs. And then when I ran back upstairs, I heard somebody run out of my parents' room and, like, hit the door. And then I don't know how they got out. And, like, I just, like, personally felt bad because, like, I saw the guy. Like, I feel like I should have done something. But, I mean...
Well, did you physically see somebody? Or
No, like, I saw him running. Like, I saw him running.
Okay, but then you would have seen him go out a window or out a door or something?
No, because when, like, you've been into the house, so it's like my parents' room's here, and then you'd have, like, it's when you come out of my parents' room, you go this way, and, like, this window, it's impossible. Like, that window's impossible to get out of.
It's second floor, too.
Yeah, second floor.
Now, the person that you've seen, I mean, what did he look like? Is it he or she? Or?
They had it was like a mask, and, like, you could only see the eyes and the mouth. But he looked like a black guy, but I'm not like 100% positive, but I'm pretty sure it was an African American. And like I'd say like 6 feet maybe, somewhere around there. I couldn't give you like an age range. I didn't really like get to see his face or anything like that.
We knew that he never mentioned a masked intruder in the 911 call. If you actually saw that, that's the first thing you say whenever you call a 911. There's a guy in my house, there's a murder in my house, I heard gunshots, but that's not what he says.
There's nothing more powerful than a defendant saying things that are so inconsistent. He thinks he's smart, but he's 16, and he's not smarter than us, and he's not smarter than the homicide investigators, and they knew it.
He's 16 years old. He's a kid. He's a minor in that situation. So I find it difficult to tell him what he needs to do and what he doesn't need to do.
Have you ever asked him, why didn't you say that on the 911 call?
I can't, obviously for legal reasons, I can't discuss my conversations with my client.
Does your dad own a gun?
Yes, he does.
How many guns does he own?
He owns 1.
1 gun? Do you know what kind of gun it is?
I just know it's like a pistol. I think it's a 22, but I'm not like 100% positive. Like only time I've ever like used it was when we went to the gun range when I was like 8 years old or something like that.
And you're like, well, we didn't ask you if you've ever used it or picked it up. We just asked if there's a gun in the home.
He has his case in one of his drawers, and like my dad, his drawers, the closet, and under the bed is like off limits, so like, I've never gone in there or like seen it or anything like that, except for when he brings it out.
Does your dad have a weapon? It wasn't, do you know anything about the murder weapon? Does your dad have a weapon? And he says, yes, he does, and then all of a sudden has to distinguish, but I haven't touched it in 8 years. There's a reason why you're saying that, because you know you had just touched it to test fire and kill both your parents.
This idea that at first he's never touched the gun.
I'm not going to go through every one of these. I don't want to retry the case.
I'm not retrying the case. What would you say to that?
That's their theory.
That's it.
Yeah.
The only times that he really showed any type of emotion outside of that was when we presented him with evidence that he didn't know we had, which the number one piece was the test fire. When we told him there was a bullet hole in the ceiling and a projectile on the floor, that's when he's like, what?
That comes from the loft, which is your bedroom. Yeah, that comes through the floor. From the loft, from your room upstairs.
Yeah.
Where your room is?
The third floor.
Yeah.
There's a bullet hole in the ceiling.
There's a bullet hole in the study area that goes through, and you can see that it comes through because it pushes out in the study area.
They use a trajectory rod.
How long has that been there?
Well, that's why we're talking to you.
It's the only time he's not prepared to answer the question. And I think that's the case because I don't think he knew it went through the floor.
And then he kind of starts putting on this little bit of a charade because his wheels are spinning. How can I lie this away? How can I talk about this? How can I say that I had nothing to do with it when it's coming from my bedroom?
I can explain the gun from the room upstairs. It was like I think it was 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. Like me and one of my friends was just like playing around, and they were about to leave, and he was like, hey, well, not really he was like me. I was like, hey, like, have you ever shot a gun before? And they were like, nah, I've never done it. And I was like, do you want me to show you how to? And like, I like went and checked the 3 places, and the gun was under my dad's bed, and I like laid the pillow. I laid my pillow and then like a blanket over it and a blanket under it, thinking like that would stop it, but I guess it did not stop it.
You can hear him searching for answers, and his explanation of that is so unbelievable, and it's so clear that he's lying about it. I think that was one of the most damning parts of the entire interview.
And in fact, when folks in the community try talking about whether he did it or not, they never talk about his own words. He's tied to it, and he can't escape it.
A few minutes ago, you said that you haven't seen it. You haven't shot it since you were a kid, and then now we kind of give you a little more, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute. So, you know,
I understand.
We don't want to keep getting deeper into this because there's more.
The story would change again, though, 30 minutes later.
He was there, like we had the conversation.
But not when you fired the gun.
Yeah, he wasn't there. He wasn't there when I fired the gun.
All of a sudden, the friend wasn't there anymore. You know, he just up and disappeared, and you know, it was again one of those inconsistencies.
They're like, aha, he said it was his friend, and then he said his friend wasn't there. Aha, we caught him. Find out who the friend is. Ask him who the friend is. But they never asked it, and then the position is, well, he's supposed to tell us who it is. Come on, he's 16. You're a seasoned investigator.
Why'd you shoot it into a pillow?
Like I saw that on movies. I thought that like stops the bullet, so like that's what I did.
Police confronted AJ about the alarm too. It was set, house was secure, all doors to the outside locked, and you turned off the house alarm before letting officers in, they reminded him. AJ sticks to his story. He saw someone else in the house.
Like I don't know like exactly what happened from the time when he came out of the room to when he left, because like as soon as I saw him, I was gone upstairs. So yeah. I don't know exactly what happened with him. I'm just saying I'm assuming that's how he got out, because I don't know any other way to get out of our house. Mm-hmm. And I know I didn't personally touch the gun. Like I know there's no gun residue on my hand or on my clothes or anything like that. So I know it has nothing to do with me. I just don't understand. I don't understand how he got out or even how he got in.
But I had nothing to do with this, so I don't know what to tell you. You know, and that was for us, that dismissive approach that he took was almost as good as him just telling me, you know, yeah, I did it. I did it because they were making me mad.
He's under pressure by these police officers. He's been accused of a crime, and he's telling them, you're not going to find GSR on my hands. You're not going to find any evidence that I did this. So either he's a mastermind criminal with nerves of steel, or he's being honest.
He said it over and over. Well, there's no GSR on me, and he was right.
It's a tactic. It's an interviewing tactic, you know. And so, because personally, I wouldn't have GSR'd anybody on that scene because I know what the weapon is. 22 does not often give back a GSR hit.
So of course Dotson's going to say that now, that it was an interview tactic. What happened in this case is that they thought that when the testing came back, there was going to be evidence of him being involved in this crime. And when it didn't come back, they were like, oh, there's no evidence that he's involved in this.
And that intruder theory, at one point, police lean into it.
We know which way your dad was sleeping. He was sleeping on his left side facing the wall, which is right where that gun's going to be. So if I'm in there rifling around, you think daddy's going to wake up and whoop someone's behind?
He will.
He will, right? You think mama's going to wake up? I mean, mamas are light sleepers usually because they're always worried about their babies. So I've got two parents in a room where a gun is kept. I've got you telling me that. Your sisters told me that's where the gun's kept, so we know this.
Exactly.
So how does a bad guy get in and get the gun?
Who is going to rifle through Dad's nightstand looking for a gun, make sure the gun is loaded, and go through the noise it takes to do that, and then walk around the other side of the bed and kill Mom first? That's a ridiculous theory to believe. The person who walked in and executed these two people always had the gun on them, and the last person who had the gun was the defendant.
52 minutes. That's how long police interviewed AJ. Over and over and over, the teen says he had nothing to do with his parents' murder. Towards the end, he floated one more idea.
I understand, like, it makes it seem like, well, you're the only other person. But, I mean, I know it personally has nothing to do with me. And I'm not, like, saying that my dad put a hit out on my mom and the dude, like, went bad and then shot my dad. Like, I'm not saying anything like that.
And it's probably the most powerful line within that statement. One, he's making his mom the person that needs to be hit. And secondly, it's an intimate knowledge of the crime scene. Dawn was shot execution style. 2 bullets so close to each other, it formed a keyhole inside her head. It was the equivalent of a hit. And Antonio was shot across the bed. As he lifted his head, it went bad. He would never know that if he had never been in that room. And so it's funny, he's sitting there lying and coming up with things. I don't think he can escape that statement.
When you tell him he's going to be charged with capital murder, reaction?
He literally says to us, "What evidence do you have?" And I said, "I just laid it out for you in this interview. I just told you every piece of evidence that we have, you know." And I said, "And we're going to get other things back, alarm records and different things like that that are going to help solidify this more, you know." And that coldness, again, it was one of the interviews that I've been in that was the coldest, because he just didn't care.
They're just a very stoic family. I think mom and dad were very stoic, and they taught AJ to not be emotional and overreact in those situations.
Later on that day, I had found out that they had taken AJ into custody, and I just remember thinking, no way, they have the wrong person. Josh was the same way. He was mad. He was that little boy, that little 16-year-old boy. Like, they have to have the wrong person.
I understand how you're saying it looks impossible, but I'm telling you, even though it looks impossible, I had nothing to do with it, and I honestly don't know what else to say. So we might as well just end this interview, because I don't know what else. I don't know what else I'm supposed to do.
Antonio and Dawn Armstrong's son wore a green jumpsuit, his hands and feet in shackles.
But tonight, those close to that team say he could not have done it. It's just
a
not in
judge
him.
decided this morning that he should stay in jail during the court proceedings, which will likely take several months. Quote, until I hear the facts and he gets convicted, I'm standing by my friend, end quote.
For prosecutors, they're moving forward with the case, still deciding whether or not to try this young man as an adult.
AJ.
He was out. For the first time since his parents were killed, AJ was going home to family. He was 17 now. As his friends were finishing up junior year of high school, AJ was getting fitted for an ankle monitor, bond condition of his capital murder charge. Now, it was time to prep for trial. Meanwhile, the case dominated the headlines in Houston. Court appearances and questions. So many questions. Mainly, why would this teen, who seemingly had it all, kill his parents? Well, AJ himself was about to tell us, and tell us why he didn't do it.
7 months before trial, AJ sat down with me for the first time. We'd do it again a year later. He had never shared his side of the story, never talked publicly about the night his parents were killed. Now, to be totally honest, there were parameters on the interview. We couldn't talk about the evidence, couldn't talk about the crime scene. No, all of that would come out in court, his attorney said. But AJ did tell me what he says happened the night of the murders.
Yeah, you guys stay.
It's been really hard. It's not even the fact of just dealing with not having my parents anymore. It's the fact that I'm being accused of something of this magnitude. I mean, like, I'm innocent. There was somebody else in the house that night, and to know that this is something I'm being accused of just makes everything so much worse.
Somebody else in the house that night. His family believes him. AJ's grandparents, Dawn's parents, and Antonio Sr.'s mother supported their grandson from the moment he was charged.
We want everybody to know our grandson is innocent.
I don't know what I would do if I didn't have the family that I have, where I would be.
Did his grandparents ever have their doubts?
No.
We will stand
We
strong.
know him.
We know our
That's
grandson.
the thing. We know our grandson.
Yes.
We know what he's capable of doing
Yes.
and what he's not capable of doing.
No.
And we know that he's not capable of murdering his mother and his father.
I never imagined my life would be like this at this point in time, but like I said, I'm just handling it the best way I can.
The state has no reason why AJ would have done something like this. The reason why they have no motive is because he didn't do it. There is no motive. There is no reason why.
There are murders in our community, and they're rare across this nation, that kill and we will never understand. His motive was he wanted his parents dead. And he certainly wanted his mother dead. He killed the one person that was attempting to hold him accountable. That is undeniable. Thousands and thousands of text messages, and we really got a sense of who these folks are as people and as parents.
As the progression of the messages went on, we could tell something was happening in the family. And I don't even know that Dawn Armstrong really understood what was going on. And it was a progression of how concerned they became with him.
There's a void of emotion within his messages.
The typical stuff that a 16-year-old male would do, spending money on his girlfriend, not wanting to hang out with his sister.
And we saw the anger and the frustration and the desperation of Dawn Armstrong.
Lying about his grades, maybe lying about practices.
All you do is lie. All you do is lie and scheme. That's all you do. I don't see a lot of mothers telling their son that.
That does not make a double murderer.
And we saw it progress throughout the spring and into the summer before they were killed.
Every time I come to court.
A.J. Armstrong didn't talk to me about the lies, about getting caught, about arguing with his parents. It was his first interview right before trial 1. He talked about a father he idolized and a mother he adored.
I mean, my dad was my best friend. My mom was the best mom you could have. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about the things that they did for me and just the great parents that they were.
The great parents that they were. Can't argue that. The Armstrongs sent their children to one of the most exclusive, expensive private schools in Houston, the Kincaid School. Bought AJ a car, took nice vacations, a dream life, so it seemed. And Dawn was just so proud of her kids.
just the value and
In 2014, she did a story with us as Josh headed off to college. Gifts for your high school grad.
this was a way that we felt he could take a piece of us with him.
In the very room that would become part of her own murder crime scene 2 years later. The blanket of happy memories found folded feet from where her lifeless body lay.
She was just a loving, caring. I just miss her so much.
We were able to prove his manipulation and his scheming that he was being accused of by the parents. The only person that ever caught him was Dawn. And Dawn didn't even know these other messages were going on. She just knew her son. Like simultaneous communication within 30 seconds of talking to his parents, specifically a lot of the deleted text messages with his girlfriend, where it is well beyond what a normal teenager would do.
We've always felt strongly about those text messages that they don't show anything but a 16-year-old, typical 16-year-old.
Typical teenager who by 2019, 3 years after those texts, after the murders, was about to go on trial. The first team of prosecutors would bring in the text messages. They'd tell the jury the Armstrong house alarm was on, all the doors and windows were locked when Dawn and Antonio Sr. were shot to death. They argued no way an intruder would have gone into Antonio Sr.'s nightstand, rummaged around looking for the ex-NFL player's pistol, instead of bringing his own gun to the scene. In the end, though, it wasn't enough.
I'm going to take you inside the courtroom.
After 38 hours of testimony from 37 witnesses over 3.5 weeks,
it is improbable the jury can reach a verdict, and accordingly, because of that, the court declares a mistrial.
A hung jury.
Is this a win? Is this a lose for you?
It's not a win or a loss. We now know that there are people that did not believe the state's theory of the case. So we're going to keep fighting for this young man as long as we have to.
But it was hardly over. The district attorney's office decided to try AJ again with 2 new prosecutors.
I knew about the case like most people in our community because it was a fascinating case.
We felt like the new kids on the block, and we felt like everybody had been there and they all got it, and we were just trying to catch up.
And again, a year later, AJ wanted to talk.
I mean, I feel like people probably would like to hear from me.
What do you want to say to them?
For me, it's just, I know that, what should I don't know. How do y'all want to handle that? Okay.
A moment with his attorneys off camera, and then
I've been adamant about that since the moment everything happened, from the moment I was on the phone till this day. I've said I didn't do it. I'll never change from that because I know it's the truth. And for me, that's just, that's just the one thing that I really want people to know, because being in this situation and just that being a constant reminder that someone would even think that it's something that I would do. Like, it's just, like, it hurts. It's frustrating.
There are people out there watching this who think, yeah, he did it. He killed his parents.
I can't sit here and allow it to affect me, because at the end of the day, not everyone's gonna love me.
another 3+ years would pass. Delays, COVID. Finally, in October 2022, Trial 2, a month before AJ turned 23 years old. He'd grown up, had a baby with Kate, who had stayed by his side. Unwavering support from the rest of the family, too. AJ's sister, Kara, now 18 years old, took the stand again, testifying for her brother. As she recounted that night, the only other survivor in the house. After only 2 weeks and 24 witnesses this time,
the court on its own motion at this time is declaring a mistrial.
A second hung jury.
It's manifestly necessary.
It's been 40, 50 witnesses. It's been probably millions of dollars of expenses by the district attorney's office. It's time to let this young man go.
So when the DA announced they would try AJ a third time, the Armstrongs didn't hold back.
We have stood by our grandson's side every day since 2016. Everyone in the family fully supports him and believes in his innocence and the charges. Our family thought and grieves.
Our family has been through tremendous grief, anxiety, and pain for the last 6 years.
But the reality is, if you kill two people in our community and the two people you kill are your parents, how else would you want us to spend our resources and our time? If we're not going after those people, what do you want from us?
It's time for the DA to stop forcing our family to live through this terrible nightmare. It's just horrible.
The evidence has always been there. We've always believed in his guilt. We just needed a fair and focused jury.
Focused because the third jury was about to get new evidence 7 years later. A speck of blood found on the eve of Trial 3 pressed against AJ Armstrong's t-shirt he was wearing the night of the murders.
I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like literally we have 3 hours before trial starts.
That would have both sides trying to figure out how did it get on AJ and whose blood was it? Inside the Houston Police Department lived the Armstrong evidence, stored here between trials. And less than 24 hours before the third one was set to start, blood spatter expert Celestina Rossi signed in to look at bloody pillows from Dawn and Antonio Sr.'s bed.
And so as I was looking through the inventory list, I realized that there was a shirt, a pair of pants, and 2 sandals that were in property.
You hadn't physically touched them, seen them yet.
Correct. Yeah, because they've always been at property. You know, they weren't used in Trial 2. They weren't brought to the courthouse, and so I never had the opportunity to look. And I was like, oh, well, if they're here, then absolutely we need to look at those.
That's exactly what she did. You see it in the video. Rossi and another officer put on gloves, cut open an evidence box, and remove AJ's sweatpants and t-shirt. She inspects the front of the shirt. Something catches her eye.
I see what looks to be small reddish-brown circular stains, which to a bloodstain pattern analyst looks like spatter. But I was like, this is suspicious to me because I've been told for years that there's no blood on his clothing, and now it appears that there are stains that look to be blood stains.
Rossi tests the stains right there using what's called a hemastick, like this. She showed us in her lab. Now, if the stick changes color, it's positive for the chemical found in blood. The stains on the shirt were negative. But then Rossi peeled that orange HPD visitor's badge and saw this. 2 reddish-brown stains on the back of the sticker. She tested them.
And it was such a strong reaction that I was like, oh wow. I mean, it almost turned the pad black.
What did you think? I have to call prosecutors, investigators. How did they miss this? What did you think?
I mean, we are within hours of the trial starting. I feel panic because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not gonna go well.
He was upset.
I was so, I mean, imagine we're the Friday before opening statements, and here we are delayed.
Delayed a couple months while DNA testing happened, confirming the blood under that badge was Antonio Sr.'s.
How come after 7 years we're just now finding this? One, there was a report that came out said there is no blood on the clothes, and that's from an accredited lab. So we said, we don't need to look at the clothes. And 2, it was something that we never even thought of.
Was it a mistake that it took investigators this long to find it? Was that a problem?
I'm not going to point fingers, but to Ryan's point, we understood it looked bad 7 years later.
No, I don't think it's a mistake. I don't think that anyone was at fault. I just don't know that that's necessarily what they were specifically, looking for.
It wasn't like he's covered in blood and we missed it, right? He had a gray t-shirt on with dark red lettering on the thing, and there were little bitty flecks that it's gonna be very hard to see to the naked eye. I'm not someone in the lab that tests shirts, so I don't know that I would have taken the sticker off. I mean, it's one of those things where you don't really think about it. Well, if there's no blood over here, why would there be blood under this tiny little sticker?
It felt dirty. It felt shady. It felt like something wasn't right. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, let me get that clear, but it just didn't feel right.
The folks who believe the blood was planted will never believe in the evidence that we have. We will never convince the folks that believe that police officers will actually plant evidence to look at this case objectively. And I'm just being raw and sincere.
Any allegation that there was any nefarious conduct by myself or the 2 HPD homicide detectives is absolutely ludicrous.
I have no doubt in my mind, based on my experience over the past 25 years, that at a minimum it was cross-contamination. The way that evidence was handled after the trials, how it was exposed to that blood, and you saw in the trial that as we moved the pillows from box to box, the blood would shed into the box.
You are tasked with ultimately trying to explain how it got there, correct?
Yes.
It was hard to envision a 16-year-old going into a room and executing both his parents. I think I even avoided the thought. And so in this trial, we realized we needed to lean into it. And that is one of the reasons why we brought in the staircase. We brought in the bed into the courtroom, because we needed the jury to understand how sinister this crime was and not hide it. We did everything different.
Trial number 3, August 2023.
Anytime, as prosecutors, we can explain to the jury the how.
The jury would see how AJ shot his parents, how blood could have ended up on the badge, according to the state, because the courtroom became the crime scene.
AJ comes into the bedroom, comes to this side of the bed, draws, fires 2 rounds, which are very close together. One goes into mom's head, one goes through mom's earlobe, and then into her head.
And then it's your theory that he stays in the same position and fires at Dad? What happens?
Because of how the trajectory is, it appears that Dad was starting to lift up his head.
So the theory is one of 2 things happened. His intent was to go into that room and kill his mother, and his mother only, and his dad woke up, and when that happened, he shot at Dad. Or his intent all along was to kill both of them.
In 2016, no blood was found on AJ, but Rossi says after analyzing the scene, that makes sense because there's no backspatter from firing the gun.
well, if we don't have any blood here on the pillowcase, we don't have any blood on her shoulder, we don't have any blood on the fitted sheet, there can't be blood on a shooter.
So where did the blood under the badge come from? Rossi explained it to the jury like this. As Antonio Sr. fought for his life, AJ came around the bed and placed a pillow over his father's head. He was found by paramedics like that. Gasping and wheezing, Antonio Sr. exhaled micro droplets of blood and saliva that got on AJ, she testified.
When they are in flight, they're drying. And so not completely dry like salt or sugar, okay? But dry to the point where when it hits an absorbent surface like a shirt, it's not soaking in. And when they walk into the Houston Police Department and they put this badge on his shirt, it preserves all of these little granules of blood and preserves it between the sticker and the shirt.
Is it believable that this dried blood would have stayed on him for hours?
Absolutely. I mean, because they're so small that they're sitting in the weave of the shirt.
It's drying in midair. I've never heard that. To me, the evidence was laughable. It was a joke. It just looked bad, in my opinion. It looked desperate. It clearly could have been cross-contamination.
Outside the Armstrong bedroom suite, the staircase AJ says he was on when he came face to face with the killer leaving his parents' bedroom. Prosecutors built that to scale for the jury, too. Remember, AJ told police he was on the steps coming down from his third-floor loft when he heard gunshots.
You can peep real quick and see what's going on from my stairs, and I saw someone coming out.
We played the 911 portion of the tape so they could hear what he said and see what it would have been. We played the portion of the defendant's statement where he says he saw it, and now they're seeing it. So we're giving them a visual of what we believe is his lies on his 911 as well as his statement.
From the jury box to the staircase, the exact 3-foot, 3-inch distance of that narrow hallway outside the Armstrong suite where AJ told police he saw a masked man.
It was like a mask, and you could only see the eyes and the mouth. But he looked like a black guy.
If that's how close you really are to that person, you're going to mention it on a 16-minute 911 call. You're not going to leave that fact out. It wasn't like I didn't get a good look or I don't know what I saw, so I won't bring it up. I mean, he would have been in his face. If you're the masked man and you see somebody right there, it's going to take nothing for you to pull the gun and shoot that person too, because you don't want to leave any witnesses.
And if you don't see him, you're going to hear him go up the stairs because it's going to be loud as you run up the stairs. So every way we looked at it was bad for the defendant.
But it wasn't just what AJ said or what he didn't say on that 911 call that was bad for the teen, prosecutors argued. It was what he was doing on his cell phone.
I have him unplugging the phone at 1:08.
Right up until the murders.
And my heart just sunk because I knew what happened at 1:09.
That would prove AJ was lying, they say. That would prove he killed his parents. At 1:40 a.m., AJ called 911.
I heard 2 gunshots downstairs in my parents' room.
Prosecutors argued that was a lie. They say AJ actually killed his parents nearly half an hour earlier, and they used his own cell phone data and records from the Armstrong security system to prove it.
I think we even narrowed the timeline down from 1:09 to 1:16 based on his phone activity, that's the exact time period in which they were killed.
It all just fit.
The night before the murders at 9:52 p.m., Kayra set the house alarm after saying goodnight to her parents on the second floor. Alarm records show the motion sensor outside their bedroom went idle at 10:39 p.m. AJ had been texting his girlfriend until close to midnight, his cell records show. At 1:02 a.m. on July 29th, he stopped using his iPhone and plugged it in a couple minutes later. At 1:08, according to those cell records, he unplugged it, though the phone stayed locked. Over the next 32 minutes, the display screen on AJ's phone went on and off, 13 times, the records show, right up until AJ called Josh, then 911, saying he heard shots.
And we know he's manipulating his phone without looking at anything in his phone. Just think about that for a moment. So from 102 to 140, his phone is on, it is locked, but it's just not sitting down.
And when that fit in perfectly with the alarm records, I thought it was over then. Then we had him.
At 1:09, a minute after AJ's phone was unplugged, that second floor motion sensor outside Dawn and Antonio Sr.'s bedroom activated. 16 minutes after that, at 1:25 a.m., the first floor motion sensor activated. The house alarm stayed set the entire time.
What he was doing in that dark room, turning the light on, putting pillows over their face, cleaning up the scene. We know that he went downstairs at 1:25, put the gun downstairs, and wrote the note. And he never used his phone to light up after he had gone downstairs.
And he's awake, moving around in his home at the very time of the murders. It doesn't get that complicated.
We know nobody came in or out of the house, and we know that motion was going on inside the house. And the motion that was going on inside the home lined up perfectly, like a puzzle, with other things we knew to be true.
If you can't trust the alarm, how could it fit like a puzzle?
The house was locked. The alarm was on. The windows were locked. That explains it all.
Trial number 2, their expert testifies that he agrees that there were 77 errors with the alarm system. So you have to ask yourself, can you trust that alarm system?
Prosecutors argued the defense misinterpreted the records, and on the night of the murders, there were no errors.
It's almost impossible in cases like this to prove on the night or at the time or whatever that something's not working. You look around it at the reliability. And I think we've proven in all 3 trials that the alarm system was not reliable.
But prosecutors leaned on those alarm records to put AJ at the house all day long, stewing.
That became important to us because that's when we believe he did the test fire. We know that parents were in and out of the house. We knew that Kayra was staying with grandmother all that week and hadn't come back yet.
And we know he's grounded that week. He is not allowed to leave the house. He's not allowed to use the cars. Kate is down in Galveston. He's upset about that. We know the day of, he's trying to borrow the Mustang from Josh to go down to Galveston. Why? Because he's not allowed to use the car. So there's something going on there that we will never understand, but it's significant in the absence of the communication with the parents. And so when folks ask what was the last straw, something in the silence of those text messages, something in him being confined to that house other than told to go pick up his sister is what's in his mind. We will never know, but that is significant. He tried to burn the house down 2 days before the murder. Who does that? He poured gasoline across the top step of his parents' stairs right outside their bedroom and set it on fire. His parents caught it. We know this because he admitted that.
The significance of that was probably big for the jury, I understand that, but also you have to look at the reaction of the family. The family didn't have much reaction to it.
Despite the text message from Dawn to Josh saying, look at this, she sent that picture to Josh. She seemed pretty upset. You say that's not really the case.
I'm not saying that's not really the case. I'm just saying that it doesn't appear that AJ was severely punished.
The morning after the fire at 6:51 a.m., this search happened on AJ's iPad. How can a car be rigged to explode when started?
I mean, we set the house on fire. We Googled how to rig a car bomb. Those are things that show us, man, you're thinking about killing your parents.
The evidence is overwhelming. The thing that causes people pause is they can't understand how someone so handsome and so young could commit such a brutal crime. That's the reality. In order to try and get A.J. Armstrong free, they had to point to someone who had a mental illness, a breakdown, who's a good person, and his life was forever changed in order to get him off.
Josh Armstrong, the oldest of the three siblings, he looked out for AJ and Kara, felt responsible for them. That was clear. In July 2016, Josh had only been back in Houston a few weeks, living in his own apartment, attending community college classes.
He was very passionate about anything he did, especially his music, and he just had a really big heart. He was such a loving and caring person.
Josh's girlfriend Hannah moved back too. The couple met a year earlier in College Station, northwest of Houston, when they were both students at Blinn College. They were inseparable, young, smiling, dizzy in love.
Our paths crossed, and then the rest was history.
What was the best part of being together?
Time just didn't exist with him. You know. I'm already gonna get emotional.
It's okay.
Oh my gosh. He was a really good guy.
Happiness turned to heartache. You know that by now. But the Josh before his parents were murdered, he was carefree, a son close to his mother. They leaned on each other, Hannah says.
I felt like I knew Dawn, especially through Josh. They talked pretty much every day. It's just so sad.
He loved his mom.
You could tell just by their phone conversations how much he loved her.
And if you read the text messages in June and July, you understand who he is and who she is as a mother and their relationship. And he was ordinary, he was kind, he was sweet.
It is so clear what happened to him in his life as a result of his parents' death. And it was a total contrast from AJ. It was Josh fell apart in the wake of his parents' death. He couldn't cope with it. And the trauma that he suffered was so extreme.
Josh started to spiral, started to lose touch with reality because he lost his parents. Prosecutors argued at trial. They used his medical records to prove that.
We knew the defense ahead of time thought that those medical records were going to be good for them. And then when we started reading them, we were like, we want to enter them into evidence because it is so clear what happened to him in his life as a result of his parents' death.
Josh had had no prior psychiatric history, but 5 months after the murders, the 20-year-old checked himself into a mental health hospital for the first time, saying he hadn't processed his parents' death. He wasn't sleeping, was constantly worried and paranoid about the suspects coming after him. He told doctors he was using drugs and alcohol to cope with the pain, admitted to feeling suicidal.
And I remember seeing early signs there that something wasn't right. But at the time, I was so scared too that I didn't see it as like schizophrenia coming through.
And even as we were reading those medical records that were so powerful, I felt guilty 18 months later reading the things that showed what he had become.
According to the medical records, by 2017, Josh said he was hearing voices, a woman in his head he wants to hurt. He told doctors he put a kitchen towel in the oven and tried to light it on fire to freshen the house. It was hard to stay in the relationship, Hannah testified.
I tried to stay for a really long time. I think we stayed together for about a year. And then it got so bad and Josh wasn't wanting to go get help. He didn't want to better himself. He felt like the medication didn't help him.
And according to those medical records, by the following year, Josh's depression, paranoia, hallucinations, and suicidal thoughts had intensified. In another psychiatric evaluation, a doctor noted patient experienced watching the murder of both his parents in 2016. Prosecutors pointed out Josh did indeed see his father dying as Antonio Sr. was wheeled out of the house on a stretcher and loaded into an ambulance. And less than 3 months later, records from a different psychiatric clinic state Josh did not witness the murder. By February 2019, things were dark. Josh was aggressive, talking to himself, referencing the devil, showing erratic behavior, and not responding to questions, his medical records say. And 2 months later, when AJ went on trial for the first time, his attorneys shocked nearly everyone in the courtroom with their theory Josh could be the real killer. And they stuck to it for all 3 trials.
Josh was finally diagnosed, meaning he saw medical professionals after the incident. But there were signs of this way before the incident. He was talking to himself.
According to family members.
According to family members, he was hearing voices. He was doing very odd, strange things. There's no question in my mind, based on my conversations with the family over 7 years, that Josh was having serious mental illness issues prior to the murders. No question.
I've covered this for as long as you've been on this case. How could you throw one son under the bus for the other?
Who, me?
Or the family? What's the reaction to that idea?
So I'm not going to speak for the family, but as a lawyer, that's my job. I actually have a duty to do that. I have no problem with that at all if I'm doing my job ethically and aggressively, and I think I and we did that.
Do you think he could be the real killer?
For legal reasons, I'm not going to, with you, accuse anyone of anything, but I think that the evidence spoke for itself regarding that issue.
I thought it was pretty disgusting, to be honest, and desperate. I don't think there's anybody in those jury rooms in all 3 trials who believe Josh did it.
It angers me. It angers me so much because there's so much evidence that points to AJ. So much evidence. It's ridiculous that Josh's mental state was used when he was never like this before. And it doesn't make any sense. And that's why in the 3rd trial, I looked at that jury and I said, I want to be so clear. Josh was never like this before this happened.
And the idea that his reputation was maligned and dragged through the mud within a courtroom, and all he did is love his brother. He believes his brother didn't do it. His only concern after the murders was for his siblings.
Well, why not just call Josh to the stand? Why not talk to Josh? Did you ever think about that?
Many of my colleagues told me to do that very thing, talk to Josh and bring him to the courtroom. And what I said is, he's been through too much. He is a suspect in Rick DeToto's mind, and that is it. And the idea that Ryan and I would have to call him to the stand in order to prove his brother did it was never going to happen.
We know from the crime scene that the killer, if it was not the defendant, had 6 minutes to get in and out of the house and do all those things. They're trying to say a psychotic person did it in 6 minutes, that he snapped into this psychotic event where he went and killed them and then snapped out of psychosis was just totally unbelievable.
How could someone that unstable commit a double murder?
The parents were executed and an angry note was left. I mean, who's more likely to do that? Someone suffering from angry, paranoid, schizophrenic, religious, there's a demon in my head asking me to kill people, hurt myself, kill animals, all the stuff that came out. I mean, that doesn't make sense to you? I mean, it's not my job to prove exactly what he did. It's my job to show that there's reasonable doubt in this case as to what happened.
We need to stop. The community needs to stop. And anybody who is saying that they still think he did it, how dare you? Because there's not one shred of evidence to suggest he had anything to do with this crime. He is another victim. In fact, he is the most tragic victim of this crime because he lives with what happened to his parents every single day. And this defendant chose to let that happen in the courtroom. We said it in closing, it was just as important for us to clear his name as it was to convict his brother.
Tomorrow, closing arguments happen. They are set for 9:30 in the morning. As you know, the judge hasn't allowed us to bring cameras into the courtroom. Well, tomorrow, that changes. We will be in there, and so you'll be able to hear closing arguments.
The state fully took on the agreement that they would prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And they, including AJ, expect to be held to that burden beyond a reasonable doubt.
What does a murderer look like?
Don't treat him any different than any other defendant.
What does a murderer look like?
Because he's been treated differently throughout this process.
Now you know.
It's time for us to bring home the truth.
Obviously, if you have followed along, you know how complex this case is. The evidence, we heard it all over the past 2 weeks, and it seems like all of the evidence was touched on in closing arguments. Everything from the alarm records to AJ's own 911 call, all of it broken down point by both the defense and prosecutors.
What did we ever do to deserve all the lies and the schemes? Those are the words of Dawn Armstrong in the spring and in the summer of 2016. What did they do to deserve all the lies and the schemes? The defendant drove his fancy car at his fancy private school. Then he fails out that summer, a month before his parents are murdered. And the two people who cared the most about that, the two people who were most affected by that, were scrambling to get him in another school and a football program so he can fit in. He never appreciated what his parents did for him.
We never told you AJ was a perfect kid. He lied about the car. He lied about his girlfriend. He lied about where we ate dinner. Yes, he's 16.
Over 7 years, they've refused to look at anything else. Their minds were closed. This is a reckless prosecution. It's a dangerous prosecution.
Let's talk about the days leading up to the murders. He took that rubbing alcohol bottle. He got gasoline in it. He poured it across the top step of the second floor where his parents reside. Then he lights it on fire Is this something a normal 16-year-old would do?
When you start pressing the state about where is the evidence, especially all the scientific evidence, they have nothing but excuses.
Remember, we don't have to prove why, but I can tell you what's in his mind. His mind is he wants to kill his parents.
Bloody clothes, shoes, gloves, something that puts AJ in the bedroom pulling the trigger. There is nothing.
He shot the murder weapon in his room. Who does that?
No gunshot residue anywhere on AJ. His hands, his feet, his clothes, anywhere. Anywhere in his room.
The homicide detectives had to tell him, your mom is dead. That's a bad thing.
You can't rely on the accuracy of these records as to what happened, especially on the day of the murders.
There has been no evidence at all that that alarm was compromised. Combined with the cell phone records, you can convict him alone.
Two technologies, folks. They don't even know each other. And they tell us that at 1:08 he took his phone off the charger, and at 1:09, less than a minute later, the person who walked in to kill these two people, the motion sensor caught him.
The crime scene alone tells you he did it. His own words in his statement and in the 911 tells you he did it. Everything points to him. Whether people want to believe it or not, all evidence points to him. That's why they can't talk about the evidence.
Only you can stop it. Only you can tell them enough is enough.
Everyone ready?
Good morning. My name is Investigator Jimmy Dotson with the HPD Homicide Division.
This case,
Officers this morning were dispatched at approximately about 1:30 in the morning.
it's a simple first grade math problem.
The location was completely secure.
There are 4 people in a house.
There was not any sign of forced entry.
The alarm system on.
They made contact with one of the children who was inside of the house at the time.
2 people are shot in the head.
The mother was deceased on scene. The father was taken to a local area hospital where he is currently in critical condition.
2 people who walked out of that house. One of them was a 12-year-old girl.
And at this point in time, it's an ongoing investigation.
There's only one other person.
Following up on some leads.
You want to know something about that person?
Trying to narrow down some things, gather a suspect.
He's the only person awake at the time his parents were killed.
This was an outstanding family.
The only person handling the murder weapon right before his parents died.
Were the kids able to tell you, hey, we think someone did this?
He's the only person trying to set the house on fire with his parents inside.
I can't give you that information right now. Like I said, I don't want to compromise the investigation.
The court declares a mistrial.
He's the only person.
It was kind of the all-American family.
Declaring a mistrial.
That his parents caught him over and over and over.
For 7 years we fought this. Over and over and over.
Kind of getting some history on things that have been going on with the family in general, outside of the family, inside of the home, things of that nature. Because we're trying to do our best to get down to what's going on in this household and figure out, who our suspects are, so we can let this up.
What if they find you guilty?
Like I told you earlier, I refuse to think about that. Like, it's the last thing that's on my mind.
Find the defendant, Antonio Armstrong Jr., guilty of capital murder as charged in the indictment.
You better get that camera out of our way.
All right, juror number 1, is this your verdict?
Yes, ma'am.
Juror number 2, is this your verdict?
Yes, ma'am.
A.J. Armstrong killed his parents, so said a jury of his peers.
Juror number 4, is this your verdict?
Yes, it is.
No tears, no reaction from A.J. on the outside. He was fingerprinted, then led out of the courtroom by deputies, mouthing a message to his wife as he left.
I mean, poor Kate. She's only had one love her life, and you could hear her crying in the background, and we felt horrible for her.
Their future as a family changed in an instant. Life in prison, possibility of parole after 40 years.
Do I think about the consequences? Yes. But the idea that you could walk into a room in the middle of the night and kill both your parents and you shouldn't spend the rest of your life in prison, that doesn't even enter my equation.
That broke my heart. It broke my heart. That's the first time AJ hasn't come back with us from court. And we're walking back, and it was just devastating. It's the first time in 7 years after hearings, trials, all the stuff that we've gone through. It's the first time he wasn't right there.
When it comes down to it and you're alone at the end of the night with that verdict and your thoughts, what was that like that first night?
It's brutal. It's really brutal. I don't think I slept. We fought with everything we had for 7 years, and we left everything, you know, in that courtroom.
Before reading the verdict, I whispered to myself, I said, Dawn, this one's gonna hurt, because she may have forgiven him the second he pulled the trigger. I mean, maybe she did. I don't know, but that's not how justice works.
Justice is not how the Armstrong family sees this. A husband, a father, a grandson was taken from them 7 years after living through the first tragedy.
They're wonderful people, they're loving, they're just like you, just like anyone else who have gone through a horrific public trial, and they've lost their son or their daughter, and now they've lost their grandson.
I know you don't want to even talk to us, but Dawn meant the world to us, and we can't imagine the position that they are in right now, and that's how we feel.
As upset as that family is, they are not going to give up, and we're not going to give up, but it's affected me. It's affected me. I'm tired. I think about AJ all the time. I think about his family. I think about things we could have done in the trial, just little things. You know, it's kind of haunting.
This one is tough because in the same way, we didn't have a family support behind us, and that gets us through a lot of nights, knowing that you're doing it for the family. And we didn't have that. We just had each other, and we believe the truth on our side. And so it's an extremely emotional case. These folks were good people, and they went to bed that night in their own home with their own children, and they were killed for no apparent reason.
He told me something right before the jury walked in. I can't tell you what it is, but it confirms what an awesome young man he is. I can't tell you, but it confirms.
I can see you like getting emotional.
Yeah, it's tough. I had to suppress everything, and it's slowly coming out. Kind of like being in combat. You're in combat for 7 years, you're fighting, you're constantly under stress, there's tension, there's anxiety, and then you get out of the war and you're back home and you're just, what do I do now, you know? And the tension in that courtroom was, I've never been in a courtroom that tense.
You better get that camera out of the way.
For prosecutors, this wasn't just about convicting one son. It was about exonerating the other. If AJ was guilty, Josh was innocent.
I believe that to the core. Because one of the things we learned from reading those text messages is Dawn Armstrong was an honorable woman and spoke the truth. I think the idea of her mentally ill son being used in that courtroom the way he was, I think she would have been appalled.
How could you do this? How are you okay with this? You ruined Josh's life, and here you are playing house with your little girlfriend and your little baby now. And meanwhile, Josh's life is completely destroyed forever by this. And there will be people out there who don't know the facts about this case and think Josh did it still. He'll forever live with that.
The picture perfect, all-American family, now finished, shattered. The thing about this story is it became about AJ Armstrong, the teen who killed his parents. A tragic, tumultuous, complicated case, no doubt, but somehow the people at the center of it all truly can be forgotten. Two parents who wanted what's best for their children.
They weren't extraordinary, they were remarkably ordinary, but they gave their kids so much. Fancy cars, they celebrated their kids. They were very well liked because they were so darn charismatic. And I think that's one of the things that was shocking about it.
I think she felt the most hopeless in this entire thing. I saw a mother who didn't know what was going on with him and couldn't fix him and didn't understand it and was upset by it. She was the disciplinarian. She was the one coming down on him, and he couldn't manipulate her.
You can't spend 30 minutes with that kid and think he did this. His resilience, his humor, his intelligence, his strength, his love of his family. You can't understand it until you're with him and you spend time with him.
If AJ didn't kill his parents, who killed them?
Not my job. It's not my job to figure that out.
The family says, oh, well, you don't know AJ, you don't know AJ. We don't need to know him, that's the point. The point of the jury was to listen to the facts. They don't need to know him, they just needed to hear the facts. And anybody with common sense would know, listening to those facts, that there's nobody else that could have done it.
Do you think the jury got it right?
I absolutely believe the jury got it right.
How do you answer those people in the community who are like, especially his family members, there's no way AJ killed his parents?
Do you know who else was charismatic? Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was charismatic. Ted Bundy was outgoing. Ted Bundy was loved by everyone. Ted Bundy was murdering women. You can't always buy into people's manipulation because sometimes people are really good at putting a front on, and behind closed doors, there's somebody completely different.
You think behind closed doors, AJ was completely different?
I think he is. I think he's very, very manipulative. And I think that's why he's getting the support from his family that he has now. And it breaks my heart because they're not seeing through the facade.
The very thing that makes it difficult for folks, his youth, his no apparent reason, is the very thing that haunts me.
Thank you so much.
Because if someone like AJ Armstrong can do that, that's a horrible concept to accept.